When I was a junior in high school, there was a girl I couldn't stop thinking about. Her name was Sienna Rollins. She wasn't just pretty. She had this strange, quiet presence. Mysterious. Cold. Most people thought she was weird. I didn't. I was fascinated by her. One day, I accidentally said her name out loud while talking about a story I was writing. She heard me, smirked, then teased me. On impulse, I asked her out. She said yes. That's how I ended up hiking with her. She chose the trail, not me. Everything felt normal at first. Then we reached a fork. She chose the left path. Confidently, despite saying she'd never been there. At some point, she disappeared. Completely. I searched for her. Then I saw movement behind a tree. I thought it was her. It wasn't. It was a man. Then I saw another. They started coming toward me. I ran. They chased me. One grabbed my ankle. I fought him off and escaped. I ran until I reached the parking lot. Her car was still there. Then she texted me and walked out of the woods like nothing happened. Calm, unbothered, like none of it mattered. I never saw her again, but I still think about it because it felt planned, like she led me there. The flute in the woods. This happened when I was 18. I'm 22 now, and I live in San Antonio, Texas. It was my senior year of high school, right when COVID had just started blowing up, so everything began to shut down, including my school. Even though everyone was supposed to be staying home and quarantining, my friend group and I were going out more than ever. There wasn't much to do since all the non-essential businesses were closed. One thing about me, I love urban exploring, especially haunted places. To this day, I still do it. I'm not one to scare easily. I've had a couple of encounters with homeless people, even had a gun pointed at me before, but nothing compared to how odd and creepy this one experience was. Around that time, I had started talking to a girl from one of my classes. Her name was Clarissa. If it weren't for her matching my story of what happened that night, I'm sure none of my friends would have believed me. We were still kind of freshly dating, but somehow I convinced her to explore a wooded, natural park at 3 Mayas of ASIM in San Antonio. The park is called O.P. Schnabel. During the day, it's nice, safe, and scenic. But at night, it can be dangerous. Police usually block off the entrances. There have also been incidents there. In 2016, a 24-year-old woman named Lauren Bump was brutally murdered and stabbed over 20 times. In 2021, a boy exploring the woods was shot. Clarissa and I arrived around 3 a.m. It was pitch black. The trees completely blocked the moonlight. I don't like using flashlights because it ruins your night vision. And honestly, I don't want anyone seeing me from far away, so we kept them off. We walked for about 15-20 minutes along the main trail. It felt unusually quiet, almost too quiet. I knew a shortcut trail that loops back to where my truck was parked. I suggested we take it and she agreed. About 2 minutes into the off-road trail, out of nowhere, a flute started playing. We both froze. The sound was clear, rhythmic, almost like someone was playing an actual piece of music. But there was something deeply wrong about it. About 15 seconds in, Clarissa started trembling, on the verge of tears. I was still trying to process it, but when she began praying out loud, asking God to save her, that's when I realized how serious this was. The weirdest part, we couldn't tell where the sound was coming from. It seemed like it was coming from the direction of the main trail, maybe 30 to 50 yards away. But it was getting louder, closer, until it felt like it was right on top of us. I knew I had to act. I told her, "Don't worry. I'm not going to let anything happen to you." Then I said we should run down the trail. We started sprinting. We had barely gone 30 feet when suddenly, bushes rustled, leaves snapped. Something big dashed across the trail right in front of us. It could have been a deer, but something felt off. I didn't see a shape. I didn't hear it approach. I didn't hear it run away. Just that moment. We immediately turned and ran back the way we came. And then the flute started again. This time it was louder, closer, surrounding us. It sounded almost like an Irish jig, but distorted, unnatural. At that point, we were trapped. 2 options: go back into the dark forest, where something just ran in front of us, or run toward the main trail, where the flute, and whoever was playing it, was. I chose the main trail. We ran. Adrenaline kicked in. We turned a 20-minute walk into about 7-8 minutes. At one point, we passed a random porta potty, and I remember thinking someone might be hiding inside. But thankfully, nothing happened. When we reached the parking area, my truck was the only vehicle there. We got in, and I drove away fast. The next day I told my friends. I even searched online to see if anyone had experienced something similar. People talked about ghosts, cults, animals making strange noises, but nothing about a soft rhythmic flute. There were houses miles away, but there's no way the sound traveled that far. It was too clear, too close. To this day, I don't know what it was. A person, a ghost, a cult, whatever it was. I never went back there at night again. I'm a 20-year-old guy working at a medium-sized hospital in Northwest Alabama as a pharmacy technician. My shift is from 6 p.m. to 4:06 a.m., and I work 7 days on, 7 days off. On my 6th night, Tuesday, I left work early to stay with my wife at her aunt's house. She was babysitting her cousins and felt uneasy staying alone because the house didn't have curtains. I hadn't gone earlier because of work, but on her last night, she was really anxious. So I went. The problem? I couldn't sleep. I'd already been struggling with insomnia from working night shifts, and that night was worse than usual. By the time I got to work the next day, I had been awake for over 24 hours. I pushed through my shift, stalking surgery rooms while listening to music. At one point, I heard the door open behind me. The hinges squealed, and it slammed shut. I turned around. No one was there. I brushed it off. Later, I entered another room and thought I saw someone hunched over the sharps container, like they were digging through it. When I turned on the light, no one. Now I was getting uneasy. Around 2 a.m., I went to deliver medications to the 5th floor. Part of that floor, sections 54 and 55, was under renovation, so it was completely empty. I decided to walk through it. It was quiet, too quiet. As I passed room 5512, I heard a rattling noise. I looked inside. An old man was on the bed, violently shaking, blood running from his eyes, nose, and mouth. He made this horrifying gargling sound. The monitor beside him was beeping rapidly. I froze. Then I stepped back into the room. He was gone. The bed was clean. The monitor was off. No signs anyone had been there. At that point, I convinced myself I was hallucinating from lack of sleep. I rushed back to the elevator. When the doors opened, an old man in a security uniform stepped in. He patted my shoulder. It was the same man. He smiled. The doors closed, and I watched as the elevator went up to the 5th floor. Moments later, the same elevator came back down. Empty. I ran back to the pharmacy and didn't move until my wife picked me up. While waiting, I Googled hallucinations from sleep deprivation. It said they start between 30 to 48 hours. I was at 38 hours. It made sense. But then, as I was leaving, I looked up at the 5th floor window. The same old man was standing there, looking at me. I've never seen him before, and I've never seen him again. I've lived in Alaska most of my life. My family moved to Fairbanks when I was 6, and I never really left. I spent my summers working fish camps as a teenager, and I started guiding professionally in my early 20s. I'm 29 now, and I work seasonally as a wilderness guide in northern Alaska. I've been doing it long enough that I don't get rattled easily. At least, I didn't think I did. Until about 3 years ago. My boyfriend at the time was Randy. He grew up in rural British Columbia and was basically my equal in the outdoors. Maybe even more experienced in some areas, especially winter navigation. We'd been together about 4 years. Our relationship revolved around trips that would make normal couples miserable. Long hunts, backcountry camping, the kind where you have to plan properly or you die. The plan was simple. We'd snowmobile between 2 state-registered cabins about 60 miles apart, spend a night at each, and be home in 4 days. We'd done it twice before. It was always fine. The forecast looked good. The first day was uneventful. We reached the second cabin by late afternoon, ate terrible freeze-dried meals Randy insisted were good, and played cards. The next morning, everything changed. A full blizzard hit out of nowhere. Despite that, we decided to leave. That was our mistake. The wind was brutal. Visibility was almost zero. Randy took the lead, and I followed his tracks. Then suddenly, his snowmobile flipped. By the time I reached him, it was bad. His leg was bent in a way it shouldn't be. I tried to get him on my snowmobile. It didn't work. He was too big, and the terrain was too unstable. After 2 failed attempts, he told me to stop. That's when we both understood. I had to leave him. I used the satellite phone to send our coordinates, though I wasn't sure the message went through. Then I set him up with everything we had and left. I rode through the storm using GPS. After about 45 minutes, something felt wrong. The terrain didn't match. Then I saw smoke. I found a small cabin, not one of the official ones. Inside, it was warm, lived in. There was food, a bedroll, signs someone had just been there. Then I found a map and a notebook. The map had locations circled, including the cabins we used. The notebook contained descriptions of people, tracked, watched. That's when everything felt wrong. Then I heard it. A scream from beneath the floor. A woman screaming like she was being killed. I ran. I didn't look back. Eventually, I reached the real cabin and called for help. A helicopter rescued Randy. He survived, but I never forgot that cabin. They later told me they couldn't find it. To this day, I don't know what I experienced. This story starts in the lead up to Christmas. To set the scene, I live near Glasgow in Scotland. I stay with my parents, siblings, cats, and dogs. We're a close-knit family and often spend nights together in the living room, watching TV, playing games, and catching up on our lives. At the time of this story, I was 16, turning 17. I was in high school, but getting closer to leaving and starting my education outside of it. In the days leading up to Christmas, during one of those late nights together, we were watching A Christmas Carol. We often have movie nights around Christmas, and it's one of my favorite things about that time of year. During the movie, we heard a knock at the door. This wasn't unusual, so we didn't think much of it. My mom got up to answer it, but nobody was there. The street was empty. Our garden wrapped from the front of the house around to the back, so she checked along the side of the house too. But there was nobody there either. She came back inside, and we resumed the movie. A few days later, I was sitting at the living room table doing exam work when I heard another knock. I paused my work and went to answer the door. But again, nobody was there. We assumed it was probably neighborhood kids playing a prank. Where I'm from, kids sometimes get bored and cause trouble instead of finding something better to do. In Scotland, there's a game called Chappie, where kids knock on someone's door and run away laughing. It's stupid, but as a kid, the adrenaline rush of someone opening the door to nobody, there can be weirdly fun. We have a family group chat where we keep each other updated on things. And throughout that week, several family members mentioned experiencing the same thing. The one that stood out the most was something my dad experienced. At the time, my dad usually stayed up later than everyone else, either playing Xbox or watching shows once the house was quiet. One night around 11:30, when the street was silent and all the kids would have been inside, he heard a very quiet knock. He was confused because of the time. He checked through the peephole before opening the door, but he saw nobody. He slowly unlocked and opened the door to look outside. Again, nobody was there, just a quiet, empty street. He locked the door and came upstairs to ask if anyone had heard it. But because the knock was so quiet, nobody else had. This started to unsettle us because it had been happening repeatedly. Nobody had ever seen or heard anyone outside except for the knocking itself. Usually, when kids do this, you hear them laughing or running away. This felt different. Christmas Day is when everything escalated. We spent the day with family opening presents, sharing gifts, watching movies, playing games, and eating way too much food. It was a great day. Later that night, I felt sick from eating so much, which always happens to me on Christmas. So I went upstairs to lie down. I ended up dozing off and woke up hours later. When I checked my phone, it said 2:01 a.m. Everyone else was in bed and the house was completely silent. I knew I wouldn't be able to fall back asleep. Once I wake up, it's hard for me to sleep again no matter what time it is. So I stayed on my phone in the dark, scrolling through social media instead of turning the TV on, watching Christmas haul videos and messaging friends who were still awake. After a while, I heard a faint knock. I wasn't sure if it came from my door, my window, or if I imagined it. I sat up straight in bed staring into the dark room with my heart racing. I didn't want to move. I knew nobody should be outside at that time on Christmas night. I didn't know if the past few weeks were just getting into my head or if someone was actually inside the house. My room is on the second floor, so someone being at my window would be very unlikely. After what felt like forever, I finally worked up the courage to open my bedroom door. As I did, I heard what sounded like footsteps coming up the stairs. My brain immediately assumed it was my dad coming up to bed after staying up late, like he usually did. I stepped into view of the staircase to tell him I was still awake and had heard the knocking again. That's when I realized it wasn't my dad. It was a man I had never seen before. I immediately felt sick when I saw him. I wondered if this was the person behind all the knocking. He was already inside the house. He was staggering as he climbed the stairs and looked heavily intoxicated. I slowly backed into my room, luckily without him seeing me, and quietly shut my door. I could hear him walking around and opening doors, going into each room one by one. I remember thinking it was only a matter of time before he reached mine. I completely froze and didn't know what to do. It felt like all my common sense disappeared. Eventually, I opened my door slightly and saw him coming out of my younger sister's room. That's when my brain finally kicked back into action. I ran to my parents' room and woke them up, telling them there was a man inside the house. My mom woke up instantly, while my dad was still groggy. We went downstairs together and found the man passed out on the couch with my dad's beers opened and scattered around him. My mom shouted at him to get out. He woke slightly and angrily insisted the house belonged to him. We tried to get him up, but he was completely dead weight. My mom slapped him trying to wake him, but he barely reacted. A few minutes later, my dad came fully downstairs, saw what was happening, and immediately took control. He shouted at the man that this was not his house and threatened him to leave. The man refused. My dad eventually had to physically lift him off the couch and drag him out the side door. He forced him outside and warned him not to come back before shutting the door. We thought it was finally over. But seconds later, glass suddenly shattered toward us. The man had punched through the window, sending broken glass inside. He pushed his face through the broken glass like something out of The Shining. While my dad went to call the police, the man started shouting aggressive threats, saying he now owned the house, that he knew what we looked like, and that he would return. Needless to say, we were all in shock. Eventually, he left, and the police arrived. They took statements from all of us. Mine was the longest since I had seen him first. Luckily, because it had snowed that night, there was a clear trail of blood leading down the street. Police followed it to a nearby playground where they found the man lying on the ground with blood and glass in his hands. They arrested him and later confirmed they believed he was the intruder. Our window was replaced the next morning. Later, I got a restraining order against the man because of my age and the threats he made. He was fined and given community service instead of jail time. When police questioned him about the weeks of knocking, he denied it. It turned out he had actually lived in our house years before we moved in. He claimed he had simply gotten drunk and went into the wrong house. Thankfully, nobody was seriously hurt, but to this day, we still have no explanation for the knocking before that night. And sometimes, even now, I still feel like I hear it again.